Today we're taking a look at divorce in ancient China.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, but specifically the Spring and Autumn period and the Ming and Qing dynasties.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and you might think that divorce back then was like, a really uncommon thing, like we think of today.
Right, right.
But actually, during the Spring and Autumn period, it was incredibly common,
Hmm.
but not always for the reasons you might think.
Oh,
It
no.
wasn't always about, personal feelings. It was more about politics and maneuvering and strategy.
Wow.
Yeah. So, for example, we have Lady Kai,
Okay.
and she was actually remarried off without a formal divorce to kind of send a message.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was the state of Kai sending a political message to Duke Huan of Qi.
Hmm.
And so that's really different from what we see later on, like in the Ming and Qing dynasties,
Okay.
where divorce was like this major social taboo,
I see. Yeah.
even for the elite.
Oh, wow.
So we're going to be looking at stories of noble women who are like caught up in these political power plays, as well as the struggles of like ordinary people.
Yeah.
And even a woman who stood up for herself in this like really heartbreaking situation.
Wow. That's quite a range of stories from ancient China.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
So let's dive into the Spring and Autumn period first.
Okay.
It was a time when marriage was really seen as the strategic alliance
Hmm.
between two families.
Yeah.
And some texts even refer to it as like forging a good relationship between two surnames.
Oh, wow.
So what can you tell us about how divorce played into all of this?
Well, during this period, divorce was more about kind of severing those political ties
Yeah,
rather than like focusing on personal feelings.
right.
Lady Kai's story is a perfect example of that.
Okay.
Her husband, Duke Huan of Ti, decided to go to war with the state of Chu.
Mm-hmm.
So he sent her back to her home state without a formal divorce.
Wow.
But it doesn't even end there.
Oh.
The state of Kai then remarried her off,
Oh my gosh.
again without a formal divorce, as like a deliberate message to Duke Huan.
That seems almost passive aggressive.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It was a very public way of showing Duke Huan
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
they weren't on his side anymore.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, their allegiance now was with Chu.
Wow.
This kind of, political maneuvering, it was pretty common back then.
Yeah.
Another fascinating story is that of Lady Huai.
Okay, and how did she get wrapped up in all of this?
Well, she was first married off to a hostage prince,
Hmm.
the future Duke Huai of Jin.
Okay.
And it was a way to kind of establish a bond between the two states.
Right.
But Duke Huai escaped.
Oh, no.
Yeah, he escaped back to his home state,
Uh-oh.
leaving Lady Huai behind, again, without a formal divorce.
So what happened to her?
Well, so to complicate things even further,
Oh,
she was then married off to Duke Huai's uncle,
oh wow.
who later became Duke Wen of Jin,
Hmm.
which is the same man who had taken her in as a hostage.
That's a crazy story.
It is, and reactions to this remarriage were very mixed.
Okay.
Some people saw Lady Huai as like double favored by destiny,
Oh, wow.
but other people criticized it as licentiousness.
Wow, that's so interesting how one situation could be viewed in two completely different ways.
Yeah, it really highlights how social values were kind of changing at this time.
Mm-hmm.
And this leads us to another story, the story of Shengbo's sister,
Okay.
who was also caught up in all of these political marriages.
Right.
But her story, as we'll discuss later, has a much more tragic ending.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
So it sounds like there's a lot more to uncover here.
Yeah.
But before we move on, is there anything else about the Spring and Autumn period that really stands out to you about divorce?
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that while these stories are really interesting and tell us a lot about the elite,
Yeah.
they don't really represent everyone.
Right.
For ordinary people, marriage and divorce were likely influenced by other things.
Yeah.
Probably less about political strategy
Right.
and more about like economic necessity or personal circumstances.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So it's important to keep that in mind as we, keep learning about this period.
For sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so now let's fast forward a bit
Okay.
to the Ming and Qing dynasties.
Right.
And see how things changed when it comes to divorce.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because what was once this like strategic political tool
Right.
became a huge social taboo,
Wow.
especially among the elite.
Yeah.
So what do you think caused that shift?
Well, during the Ming and Qing dynasties, Confucian values really took hold.
Okay.
And they put a huge emphasis on family harmony.
Okay. Yeah.
And so because of that, divorce was seen as like this disruption
Yeah.
of this harmony.
Right.
And it could really damage a man's reputation.
Wow, so it was really looked down upon.
Yeah, and there's this really interesting quote from Fang Bao,
Okay.
who was a scholar from that era.
Okay.
And he basically complained that men couldn't divorce their wives, even if they were really unhappy in their marriage.
That seems kind of counterintuitive.
Yeah, it really does.
You would think that a society that's so focused on harmony
Right.
would want people to be able to leave relationships that weren't working.
You would think so, but
Yeah.
actually this taboo probably had some unintended consequences.
Oh, like what?
Well, By making it so hard to legally separate,
Yeah.
men started taking concubines
Oh.
as a way to, seek companionship and fulfillment outside of their marriage
Yeah.
if they were unhappy.
So basically, trying to force this image of a harmonious family
Right.
might have actually led to more suffering.
Yeah, especially for the wives.
Right. It's important to remember, though, that this pressure to maintain appearances
Yeah,
really only applied to the elite.
exactly.
So what about everyone else? What was divorce like for ordinary people?
Well, for the lower classes, economic hardship was a huge factor.
Yeah.
Much more than social stigma.
Right.
And so there are a lot of records that show men actually selling their wives because of poverty.
Wow.
It wasn't about reputation or social standing at all.
Right.
It was just about survival.
Wow. That's heartbreaking.
It is. It really shows how the pressures and constraints around divorce were very different for different social classes.
Definitely. And there's actually a great example of this in the classic Chinese novel Water Margin.
Oh, yeah.
One of the main characters, Lin Chong,
Okay.
he's falsely accused of a crime.
Oh, no.
And to protect his wife, he writes her a letter of divorce
Oh, wow.
so she can remarry.
Hmm.
And knowing the context of divorce during that time,
Yeah,
it really adds another layer to his actions.
for sure.
It wasn't that he wanted to divorce her. It
Yeah.
was that he was trying to keep her safe.
Yeah,
Because the system wasn't really set up to help them.
exactly. It shows the really difficult choices people had to make back then.
Yeah.
For the elite, it was all about reputation.
Yeah.
But for the poor, it was about life and death.
So we're seeing this really complex relationship with divorce,
Right.
influenced by social expectations, economics, and even gender.
Absolutely.
And this leads to a question, did women have any say in all of this?
That's a great question.
Yeah. Could they initiate divorce?
It seems like in earlier periods, like the spring and autumn period, and even the Western Han Dynasty,
Okay.
women did have some agency
Okay.
when it came to initiating divorce.
Hmm.
But as we move into the Ming and Qing dynasties, things change,
So things got more restrictive.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
By the Ming and Qing dynasties, it was really hard for women to initiate divorce, both because of social expectations and the legal systems in place at the time.
But were there any exceptions?
There was one.
Oh.
It was a legal concept called yiju.
Oh, okay. And what is that exactly?
Basically, it means that the relationship has completely broken down.
Okay.
And in those cases, divorce was allowed,
Mm.
even if it was the woman who requested it.
So even though the system wasn't really fair to women,
Right.
there was at least some recognition that certain things were so bad that they
Yes.
justified ending a marriage,
Exactly.
even if the woman asked for it.
Yeah, and to see how this played out in a real situation,
Okay.
let's go back to the story of Shengbo's sister.
All right.
It's a really powerful reminder that behind all of these big societal changes and legal frameworks,
Yeah.
there were real people
Right.
dealing with really tough choices.
Okay. So Shengbo's sister.
Yeah, so she's a really sad example of how women, even those from like powerful families,
Yeah.
could be used as pawns
Yeah.
in these political games.
Right.
Like we talked about earlier, Shengbo, he saw a chance to improve his own position.
Yeah.
And so he decided to marry his half-sister
Mm.
to a powerful noble from the state of Jin.
Wow.
And this was actually her second marriage.
Oh, wow.
She had been widowed before this.
I can't believe he would use his own sister like that.
Yeah, and she was really unhappy about it.
Yeah.
There's this really sad quote from her,
Oh,
where she says to Shengbo, "Even birds and beasts do not abandon their mates. What will you do?"
wow.
So she's basically like begging him to be loyal and compassionate,
Yeah.
reminding him that even animals show more loyalty than he is.
And did it work?
No. Sadly, he didn't listen.
Oh, no.
He forced her into the marriage.
Wow.
And the tragedy doesn't even end there. After her second husband died,
Okay.
her first husband, he wanted to prove that he was loyal to the new rulers in Jin.
Mm-hmm.
And so he did something horrible.
Oh, no. What did he do?
He drowned her 2 sons.
Oh, my gosh. That's awful. What happened to Shengbo's sister after that?
You know what's amazing is that even after all of that,
Yeah.
she still showed incredible strength.
Mm.
She refused to go back to her first husband. She said that she couldn't live with a man who couldn't protect his own wife
Yeah.
or raise his children with compassion.
That's a really powerful act of defiance, especially in a society where women didn't have a lot of control.
It really is. It shows how resilient people can be
Yeah.
and that desire for autonomy, even when things are really tough.
So we've really explored divorce in ancient China from all these different angles.
Yeah, we have.
You know, the political stuff in the spring and autumn period,
Mhm.
the social pressures and economic realities of the Ming and Qing dynasties,
Yeah.
and the stories of the people who lived through these times.
It's fascinating to see how things changed from that early pragmatism,
Right.
where marriage was just a tool,
Yeah.
to the later periods where it was all about keeping up appearances.
Right. And even through all of that, we can still see these glimmers of hope.
Yeah.
of people like Lady Kai and Shangbo's sister making their own choices,
Absolutely.
even if their choices were limited.
Yeah, it really makes you think about how much things have actually changed.
Yeah.
Are we really free to decide who to marry and whether to get divorced?
Right.
Or are we still influenced by social pressures, money, gender roles?
It's a really good question.
Yeah.
And a good place to end our deep dive today.
Yeah.
It's something for all of us to think about.
Yeah. I hope everyone enjoyed this look into ancient Chinese history.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.